Crypto outlook, among other things, is Anthony Scaramucci of Skyridge Capital. It's good to see you. Welcome back.
Good to be on.
What is going on? I know I ask you this every time, but it's such a volatile asset class that the question needs to be re-asked because it was at north of 70 and now here we are.
Just promise me if we get to 100,000 at the end of the year, you'll invite me back.
I definitely will.
Promise me.
I definitely will.
I won't have the basketball trophy, but you have a lot of things going on at the same time. You had the German government selling some Bitcoin. You have the Mt. Gox bankruptcy, which has been a 10-year drawn-out affair, is now going to be releasing about 140,000 Bitcoins. And so Skyridge, alongside a Fortress, participated in that. And so you have a combination of these things going on at the same time that there's been some selling pressure in the ETF. And so when that happens, Bitcoin is a volatile asset. You also had a halving, not to get into the Bitcoin jargon with you, but
I think our viewers are well versed on that.
Okay, so every time you have a halving, a result of which it forces the miners to sell some Bitcoin to keep up their revenues, which puts temporary pressure on Bitcoin. But we still love the fundamentals of Bitcoin long term. And I do think, as I said, it'll be 170,000 post-halving, but I think it can get to 100,000 by year end, but it has to chug through this slog right now. One last quick point.
Sure.
FTX is going to be releasing shortly $16 billion roughly of cash to investors that had their accounts at FTX. And so that's very good news for Bitcoin holders, I believe, because a lot of that was in Bitcoin. It got frozen in the bankruptcy. It got dollarized, unfortunately, at low numbers for Bitcoin. But it's going to go back to those account holders shortly. And we think a lot of that may flow into the assets.
Oh, I was going to ask you that. Do you think, at least for those people, right, in their minds, there's some tarnish on the story enough that they won't want to assume the risk again in crypto because of what happened to them in the first place?
We call these things life chips. You know, if you get a windfall back like that, you were counting on not getting that money back. Now that you're getting it, you may buy a car, you may buy a house, you may buy a summer house, but I do think 40 to 50% of that will go back into the asset class. I mean, these are hardcore people. Remember, they're early adopters too. If you had an account at FTX or you have an account at Coinbase, you're considered to be an early adopter in the digital asset space. And so early adopters, have typical loyalty to the asset class.
You raise another interesting point when you mention the German government selling. How big of a risk do you think sovereigns in general are to the story? We have to figure that sovereigns are large players, right? And the ebbs and flows of government and things that happen. Is that a longer term risk more so than people have thought about?
I don't think so, Scott. And I'll take you back to the situation, the early days of Uber. No government wanted Uber, no administrator wanted Uber, no mayor wanted Uber. All the regulators said no to Uber, but the people wanted Uber. And one thing that just happened today in the GOP platform, they're going to have their convention next week. Right there, glaringly in the GOP platform, is the protection of digital assets and the protection specifically of Bitcoin. So I think that's a huge mistake by the Democrats. I feel like they're fumbling the football on digital assets. It's not a niche business anymore. Okay, you could go by the Mike Novogratz discussion.